that word, but anxiety is fear of something within your own being. And in Dune, this is what the teachings of the princely child, because that's Shadrach, that's what the initiations were. Mm-hmm. Is that, especially with some of the rites that he had to go through, was to confront the fear within his own self when it's not really a legitimate threat. And we are in the same situation, that the human being has so estranged themselves from their own dark side, and I don't mean something negative. The dark side is actually something positive. It's an aspect of ourselves that we have thrown aside.
Yeah.
And we're not connected to looking at our own self. This then creates this estrangement, and all of the repressed content, we get anxiety about it. So it's about something of ourselves inside that we fear, that we are in lack of, and that we're in denial of. And this, over time, builds up this sense of anxiety. And so we have this culture of stress. And then we have the next culture that tries to deal with the stress, meaning the medical, pharmaceutical. Okay, yeah, everybody's stressed. Okay, so let's rearrange the furniture now on the Titanic, and let's have some more medication, and let's have some more yoga, and let's do a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and maybe let's change the work hours a bit, and can you breathe a little bit more deeply, and all this nonsense, all this superficial topical stuff. Anything to avoid the true Freudian, true full psychological analysis of what the hell is really going on. So I'm not a believer in any of these gimmicks and topical, kind of scenarios, because, that just prolongs the problem. And human beings are going to really have to take responsibility. There's no easy way. You're going to have to take responsibility. But I claim that, that this is incredibly enjoyable. When you're discovering the mystery of the self, when you're studying the masters, when you're really learning about the mind and what the mind is, what the brain is, what ancestral thought is, it's a tremendously revealing thing.
Yeah,
it's like the individual who is diagnosed with cancer, or a person in their family, and I know many examples of this because I was very, very affiliated with the holistic movement in America, that a family member or a parent gets cancer, and 4 or 5 years down the line, and sometimes even shorter, when the son or the mother or the family members who've been running and studying the holistic thing, they will turn to you and say it's been the biggest revelations of their life, even though it was born from a trauma, and there was a panic. By them learning about herbs, and by them learning about the right kind of eating, and the aromatherapy and reflexology, they have completely transformed as people.
Yeah,
that they are more educated than the doctors who were diagnosing them in the first place.
Yeah, it's a true awakening.
This is what I mean. See it as an adventure.
Yeah.
Adventure is not just marching off, the Mount Shasta and climbing up the mountain. There's other kind of euphoria than just physical things. You should do those too, but there's also intellectual pursuits, spiritual pursuits that can bring you tremendous knowledge and tremendous enjoyment of a kind that most unawakened people, they don't have. They might want to run and swat tennis balls, and they might want to run and, roller skate, or they want to climb mountains or do with all this physical stuff, and their lives are basically empty because they're filling their days with the constant stimulus of a world that's just going to be there 10,000 years, later after they're dead and gone.
Yeah.
But they've never really, moved to develop the thing called life, the life force, the soul, the spirit.
No, and it's not they're not eating the proper food to feed the soul.
Yep.
And that's exactly.
And unfortunately, this is again the condition of the training. Parents who are just not smart enough or clever enough or willful enough to put their children into better schools. They just send them right down the block to these cages, to these utterly preposterous mind control factories, and then they'll happily tell you that they were brought up in the 60s and listened to the Moody Blues and they listened to Pink Floyd, and I just go, knock, knock, knock. How can you be telling me that?
Yeah.
That you grew up on all this music and all this incredible movie making and spiritualism, and for what it was worth, and then you tell me that you're living in suburbia, you're living in a box, and you have the audacity that you feed this cereal and this toxic meat, toxic milk to your children, and then you're sending them off down the block to these schools, and then you're laughingly telling me, hey, look at my photographs when I had my tie-dye on, and you're telling me there's no such thing as hypocrisy or injustice in the world. You're a living example of it.
Yeah, we like to call them the weekend warriors.
That's right, and it's the same all over the place, because this is the ego. This is, again, as I was saying, the performance, the hoop jumping. Oh, yeah, I got my 2-3 years, to just let loose, so I'll dabble. And the New Age movement and the conspiracy movement, full of dabblers.
Yeah.
Okay, come and dabble, but, can you persist, find out, discover, make it a life passion? Well, you don't have that. What you have is total, utter dabblers. And you know how many of these people I've met in my life who for like 2 years or 18 months, they'll get into what you're doing and they'll read up on it and they'll browse it. And then when it becomes too hot to handle, when they realize, oh, Jesus, this is really something that's going to open my eyes and cause me to really breathe deeply and discover, that I can be empowered now, but it means that I have to leave the role and I have to leave the carnival and I have to detach from all this nonsense. Then you don't see them for love nor money. They scarper as fast as they can get in. They run right back into the matrix, right back into the lie.
Yeah, well, who wants to be responsible for themselves, right?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, there's so much more, and the time goes by so quick. Before we do head out here, though, I guess you've kind of already said it, but just for those that are maybe just haven't heard it or maybe need to hear it again, tell us what 2012 is bringing us.
Well, again, it'll be a different experience for each person. But on a general way, the key thing is now that the key component to remember is that we're going to start being able to see behind the mask. And that means a different reality for both protagonist and antagonist. It does mean that there will be political, because these kinds of effects are going to be felt on all the levels, both political, social, relational, domestic, you name it. So it depends what milieu we're addressing. If I'm talking about 2012 in relationship to relationships or the domestic situation, or like on my DVD with 2012, that's why it's so long. It's like 5 discs long. We try to explore all the different permutations of this. On the political level, I mean, a blind man can see that there's revelations taking place already. Things are massively changing. To put it in a nutshell, America has always been an aristocracy. It's just that now you're finding out. So there's one example of the mask coming down. The mask is coming down to realize there never has been a democracy. The people in power are not democratic. They're aristocratic. They are oligarchical. They've always been that way, and they always will be that way until they're taken out. And so now the American public are realizing that a lot of the spiel that they've been listening to from the time of Roosevelt all the way back is a complete joke.
Yeah.
And that whatever comes out of these people's mouths is a total lie. Now, some people can handle that and change their political affiliations and do something different in the political milieu, or they can just continue to go along, and maintain the status quo. Same thing on the relationships, same thing on the personal level. When a person starts to analyze themselves and see the way that they're operating, they can realize what kind of, tyrannical aspects that they have, or realize what kind of vampiristic or violent or sadistic ways that they have. Look at their own needs. Look at their own inauthenticity. Look at their own, courting. Look at how a person, you might want to make somebody very guilty in order to have control over them. Or you might allow people in your life that make you feel very guilty. You might tolerate untold violation of your sovereignty. Why would you want to do that? So if people are abusing you and you feel under the weather, you see, and you're at work and you don't set your own boundaries and people keep violating it, well, this new energy, which is coming in the next 5 years, which has already started, is going to assist you to be able to understand what it is that helps you to bring in the very kind of adversarial, action that we talked about at the beginning of the show. Now the human race is going to get an idea of what am I doing to bring that in? Yeah, I got to the point where I know that my life is full of adversity and that the world is full of adversity, but that's basically it, stumm, from that moment on. Well, that was the 20th century mentality. In the 21st century, you're going to be given the tools, you're going to get a chance to hear the teachings and the traditions that show you what you are doing to bring in the things in your life that you don't want.
You take responsibility.
Whether that's Byron Katie, or Krishnamurti. I mean, there's so many teachers out there. Eckhart Tolle has done some great work. There's all sorts of teachers out there that are showing you what is your mind setting. What have you been conditioned to believe that brings in the kind of things that, cause you to